Okay, so this time we're looking at the end of Mark's Gospel, and it's an interesting example of how one becomes doubtful about a large chunk of text. There are a few large chunks of text like this in the New Testament where people are doubtful whether it should be there or not. And this is the ending of Mark. If you look at the witnesses available, you can see that a very small number of manuscripts omit the ending altogether. You can add to that one translation into Latin, and 304 is a commentary, and it only comments on some bits of the New Testament. It leaves a lot out. That's because the person who's writing it doesn't feel like commenting on that. And it may be the reason that they leave out the ending of Mark is because the chap doesn't feel like commenting on it. Now, it's fairly obvious there's a lot of manuscripts that have the ending in, and only a very small number that miss it out. So why do they reject it? And the reason is the style. If you read through it, it even shows up if you read through it, something like the Authorized Version or the Revised Version, a fairly literal translation. You can see that you've got a story coming along with quite a lot of detail in it, and then suddenly there's this set of summaries of events, which is very, very short. So the style has changed hugely between the verses immediately before and this last section. And the critics have tended to look at it and say, ooh, that's a huge change of style. It looks like it's been added by somebody else. And that's the reason that they do it. But if you look at the manuscript, the other thing that's often quoted is that the various different manuscripts that miss it out often have a space where it could go, but the spaces aren't big enough for it. And if you go through the Codex Vaticanus or the Codex Sinaiticus, you find that every book, the rest of the column is left blank, and the new book starts on a new column. So that evidence doesn't really help you very much. It's a lot made of it, but it really doesn't signify at all. Now, if you plot the chart, we've got a chart with multidimensional scaling, which shows the different witnesses. You can spot the witnesses that lack the end of Mark. There they are. There's 4 of them anyway, and that's it. The others simply, well, they have the ending in. Some of them have 2 endings in. They've got the short ending and the long ending as well, and some of them have it marked as, are we sure? But most manuscripts have it there. So the missing ones do look rather a forlorn set when you put it together. And not only that, they all come from the same part of the world. They're like Alexandrian manuscripts, and physically they came from Egypt. So it gets even more suspicious when you have a tiny number of manuscripts, all of which come from the same place. And it's only the style of writing that we have to account for. The question is, why would the style of the ending of Mark be so much different from the little bit before? And really, your outside textual criticism here, you're talking about higher criticism, you're talking about explaining how the Gospels were written. Now, if you can account for the style, then the obvious thing will be the long answer, the long ending, the ending that we normally have in our Bibles. So let's think why the style will be different. And I'd suggest that there's a good reason, which is that Mark is basically the scribe for Peter. All the accounts from the early church of how Mark's gospel was written say Mark accompanied Peter on a journey. He gave a set of talks to an audience, and Mark translated for him. Mark was then asked at the end of it, can you leave us a record of what was said in these talks? And so Mark wrote down his gospel, and he writes down the account, mainly, if you look at the Gospel of Mark, it's always things where Peter is present. It has a very immediate kind of feel to it. If you change the he back to I or they to we, you find that you get something that really does read like an eyewitness account, and he's writing down what Peter told him. When it gets to the bit about the death and resurrection of Jesus, there are additional bits to it. They tend to be rather terse, but it looks as though Mark is actually adding his own ideas, and he's also got a little bit from some of the women that went to the tomb and so on. But again, apart from the bit about the man who lost his linen sheet, which is terse, again, he's writing down a story from somebody else, and it's fairly detailed. But that reaches an end at the end of Mark 16, verse 8. That's the last bit, which has this other person giving him writing down what someone else is saying, and he's just writing his own words. And you've got this very terse bit, which matches the bit about the man in the linen sheet. So I'd say you can account for the style as being Mark writing from himself as opposed to writing what somebody else was telling him. So summarizing what we've got, long ending of Mark's found in almost every manuscript, only 6 miss it out. One of those is a partial manuscript anyway, and one's a commentary. They are different in style, but you can account for that with this change of source in Mark, that Mark is using writing what he himself thinks. He got his own terse style rather than reporting what somebody else has told him. And the ones that omit it are all from the same place. And you can imagine that an early copy of Mark made its way to Egypt, but the last page got torn off somehow, and people copying it copied it, but they missed out the last page. And that's why you've got 6 Egyptian manuscripts which missed that bit out. And I think that's probably a better explanation than that someone made it up and added it on later on. But the last comment is it doesn't make much difference, because everything in that bit of Mark is pretty much repeated somewhere else in the New Testament. So what you get is an account which is exactly the same as the account in the other Gospels. So you don't lose anything, even if you miss it out, although I personally think that it's part of the original text. It all suggests that those verses are genuine. And yes, that's my account.
Very helpful indeed, John. Thank you.